Hi, Charles. Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Can hear you just fine. Good evening to you. Is it evening there? And Charles, welcome. We just finished the screening. You're joining us from Lithuania. How's your day? And also, please, if you want to give us thoughts on the film before we, or anything that you'd like to add before we jump into Q&A.
Yeah, I mean, first, obviously, thank you to Mimesis. This project hasn't really shown at festivals for various reasons, but Mimesis is, I guess, a good one. I'm feeling I've had kind of an intense day and week, a good but intense week. So I'm sorry if my brain freezes at any point. I don't really want to say anything else about the film. I'm sure maybe we'll want to talk about what this contract thing is. But yeah, I mean, I think it's important to talk about, or at least for my own practice, I prefer to talk about things in these more collective ways. So I'm just thankful to all of these panelists who are on the stage right now. Just excited to hear your thoughts on these themes, and hopefully I won't be talking too much. And yeah, I hope there's maybe a friend or two in the audience, and hope everyone is feeling okay on this. Is it a Thursday morning? That's all I have to say.
No, thank you, Charles. Just so that you know who is on the stage and who we're talking to, I think we should all introduce ourselves to you and to the rest of our audience out here. So my name is Eric Coombs Ismail. You could describe me as the founder of the Mimesis Documentary Festival. I run the Center for Documentary Media at the University of Colorado Boulder, which hosts Mimesis at this point. And I think we should just go down the line here. Maybe everyone could introduce themselves very briefly and just say maybe what project you have in the festival this year, and then that would give Charles at least some idea of who he's speaking with. Mahta?
Hi. Hey, Charles. Hey, how you doing? I'm Mahda Purmehdi, and I'm a filmmaker. I'm also a student here at CU Boulder, and my project is titled The Blob, that I made in collaboration with one of my friends. That is going to be tomorrow in the 1 p.m. block.
Hi, Charles, and everyone. My name is Katya Karableva. I'm a social researcher and a curator, and also a migrant coming from Russia, currently based in Quebec. Here, just this week, I'm a filmmaker because this festival invited me in this capacity, and I have a film to show. And yeah, I have so many thoughts about your film.
Hi, Liz Roberts. I have a film called Love is the Drug screening tonight at 8 p.m. about needle exchange and drug user organizing in activist media.
Hey, I'm Nellie Clues. I'm here showing a film called The Dells, which is showing today at 4, which is a film made about temporary student workers who come to Wisconsin Dells to do seasonal jobs.
Hi, Charles. We've met. I'm Chloe, a part of the programming committee. Nice to see you again.
Well, so maybe we can maybe start with, well, I don't really know where to start, but I'll say that I think that it doesn't surprise me that not a lot of festivals have screened this work, but Mimesis and our programming team never back down from a dare which to some extent I feel like the entire piece is a dare, as I think I've heard more than one programmer describe it. And in that way, I think you might have gone under our skin, as it were, and we can kind of say, no, we can do this. We'll show this movie, sure, and we'll talk about it. We've got no problem doing that. No one threw any tomatoes at the screen, but I also think we might not do any of the things that you demanded of us, and maybe we could start there and see where that goes.
And maybe on that theme, you're offering transparency here, which I think is so evocative of what you're looking for in this film, or grappling at. What does it mean to be transparent in that way? Good bounce on those.
If you had a response to that, Charles.
Yeah, well, first, I just want to say that I'm really excited to watch all of your films later this month virtually. I've always watched my Mises virtually, pretty much every year. I don't know if I have a direct answer, except that so I think this is maybe the 7th or 8th time the project has shown, and it's usually been, a combination of art and film, small nonprofit institutions, mostly in the States. It also screened in Bangalore in India. It's going to be in London later this year. It was in Vancouver. And all of these locations kind of, it's a different relationship to these questions around complicity and funding, and contracts, of course, if we're thinking about legal contracts. And I think, I think this word dare is funny. I think it should be said that, in general, I see myself as a cultural worker. I make films, but most of the past few years, I've worked at an art foundation, a nonprofit gallery in New York. I teach at universities. I'm on pretty much every side of these of the themes in the film, for better or for worse. And I think I never from the beginning, I knew that it would often the contract would come off as a dare no matter what. But I never wanted it to be creating an antagonistic relationship. I think what the contract tries to do is embrace the fact that we're all precarious, unless you have, a pot of gold in the back room, which in that case, good for you. But most of us don't. And so I think the contract is just trying to propose different frameworks of thinking how we're bound to each other. And that binding can be harmful sometimes, most of the time. Most people, when they think about contracts and complicity, they're dirty things. Contracts, literally kill every single day. But that doesn't mean they can't still be useful frameworks to think about how we relate to each other. But it's still been really difficult because, of course, the kinds of places that want to show this work are, again, the unfunded organizations that kind of embody these kind of undercommons spaces, if they even have any money to begin with. I think so the contract is all of these things. And I don't think we really have time to get into examples of how the contract has existed in different ways. It's not necessarily a legal agreement. And there goes that train of thought. I think I'm going to stop and hand it over to someone else.
Well, I do think that the concept of the contract is probably something that we all on this stage have had to deal with. Obviously in just daily life, they're everywhere, but as artists or filmmakers in this specific context, and maybe even thinking of our work contractually in the sense that putting something up on a screen in some way implicates another person in something that you experienced or something that you made or created kind of by default. And you know, there's a lovely essay by Vivian Sobchak about this, about death on screen, you know, where she talks about how you are implicating somebody ethically whenever you represent something like that. And we actually saw that yesterday on screen. We saw someone's dying father, right? And the implication that kind of imposes upon an audience, on viewers, how it almost immediately demands that they participate in kind of this ethical morass, whether they like it or not, brings up the idea of the contract, I think, and consent, and whether spectating, viewing, being an audience member requires a sort of ethical engagement with the work. Obviously, Charles is explicitly demanding it, but to some extent, I think that it's kind of revealing that we're always doing that when we make work and put it up on the screen. It doesn't have to be so explicitly demanded as it is in Charles's piece. So I just don't know if anyone on the stage might have a response or idea around this idea of the contract, complicity, implicating others without their consent or with it. Whether or not buying a ticket equals consent, I don't know. And I will call on you if nobody, Katya.
Well, it's hard for me to speak like specifically about the art world because I'm a guest here. But watching the film, I had like, I don't know, like I just felt that it spoke to so many of my experiences, my experience as a civic actor in in Russia, like where the authoritarianism was like slowly escalating and we still had some hope, and like it wasn't clear what were we supposed to do to prevent the catastrophe that is happening right now with the war and pretty much the country succumbing to fascism. Then I thought about me as a political migrant and how actually like a radical and anti-regime stance kind of also becomes a capital for Russian civic actors to actually have mobility because to apply for a visa, you really need to show your opposition portfolio, how I was arrested here and then I did that. So you can trust me, you can take me into a European country or the US, and how like often it actually like having this on paper does not correspond to a person's like actual opposition activities. I did research with political migrants from Russia, and there are people who are like, oh, I can't apply to this visa because I've never been arrested because I just run really fast. So, then I thought about the idea of the US sanctuary universities as a solution because I am right now, I'm able to to take a path of academic migration that sort of like keeps me away from the immobility and other inconveniences of, let's say, refugee status, and how, like a university here took me in pretty much like providing that space like as a refuge. And then I thought about it as, in the context of my current PhD project that I'm already doing in Quebec, Canada, called On the Migration of Implicated Subject. So I don't know, the topics of complicity, implication, the kind of the purity of the divisions between perpetrators and victims are a lot on my mind. And maybe I can speak about it a little further in depth later.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking while watching the film and also hearing you talk about like building like a portfolio or whatever, like the sort of funding structure of documentaries if you apply for grants and things, and the imperative, like they have like the Sundance Common app for like, I think think it's like applying to college or something. But I made a film that has, ostensibly it has a group of people. It's about a group of people who now are very, even more than when I made it, very politicized. They're migrant workers, although they're sort of in a different category than people who are living in the US permanently, because they come just for a little bit and then they leave. So anyway, but there's all these questions about like, how is this film going to help? How are you part of this community, and how is this film going to help the people in the community? Which maybe I just like did a bad job and didn't get any grants, but I just feel like there's this thing that doesn't really, I don't know. It's like when I feel like there isn't really, you don't know who's going to watch the film. I don't know if you can really, I don't think that the ticket buying public of whatever stripe, whether it's whatever their political leanings and level of interest in a film, can really be expected to take obligations away from viewing something. I mean, the idea, I guess, is that you emotionally or like rhetorically resonate enough that you get people to change their mind. Part of the, stuff that you're really kind of like poking holes in with all the website language. So yeah, I don't know. I'm always just kind of like, oh, am I just not doing a good enough job? Or is this just kind of like, is a film of the type that I'm making and the type, that I'm interested in making not really just like capable of doing that? So yeah, I don't know. I feel like for me, the only kind of contract I can end up focusing on is between me and the people in the film, and sort of like, what's the social obligation there? There's release forms and so forth that are like literal contracts, but for me, it's becomes more about the sort of like nuanced social experience of like, who's this person? How am I representing them? Is it fair? Is it, I'm still doing, it's my, through editing and so forth, I'm putting my own feelings and thoughts and views in there. But, like then that's a person who's just needs some kind of contract is a not as good of a word as just sort of relational or relationship, like navigation. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard with the audience. Like, who's going to come? We don't know.
Well, from what you're saying, it always makes me think of the release form, right? And like that,
Yeah.
this like, feel like there's this pervasive misunderstanding of the release form, where people think it's to protect people in the movie.
Definitely not.
It's obviously to protect the filmmaker and the movie and whatever institutions might screen that movie, and nothing to do with protecting the subject or anyone who might appear or be signing that release form, right? But there still is this idea of like, oh, this somehow makes it okay. This, you're being informed, and so you can consent because you're, signing this form. And that kind of contract maybe is different than the social obligation that you're describing when engaging, having a relationship, building a relationship with somebody with a camera between you, which is kind of a strange obstacle to navigate in relationship building, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the worst moment is if asking someone to sign a release form. I feel like I drop the ball like half the time because I just don't want to do it, because it's like, are you gonna sue me?
Right.
Like, I hope not. I hope you like the film. Producers will say otherwise, but yeah, I don't know. It is a completely different thing. It's just for like, in case you want a distributor it would be better for them.
Yeah, hi Charles. I was really losing it over the MoMA section and the
Yes.
activist ephemera in the vitrines, because the film I'm showing tonight was a commission made in conjunction with a show at MoMA PS1 with activist ephemera in the vitrines, and they asked me to make this film and screen it for the opening. And it was I feel like these archives are really important as harm reduction archives from sex workers and drug users. It's like and they're really excited to be in this show at PS1 and with MoMA, because their work has always been peripheral, and just ACT UP has been the kind of respectable entity that's been recognized in that era of activism. But it's and part of me, I had a lot of feelings about doing something contractually with MoMA, but I was doing it with Visual Aids, this other organization but does that make it better? I don't know. Why did they funded it in addition to a grant by a California organization where I was living, but somehow the $500 from PS1 felt so much dirtier than any of the rest of the money that came from these other organizations. I don't know, but it's, to me, it's like the people who did this work and are so excited to have their flyers and their zines in these vitrines at PS1 and to have this like legitimate, I don't know. It's yeah, that was kind of a complicated, like layered thing that I moved through. And so to see that section in your film was really, I don't know, made it even worse for me in a good way. Thank you.
I think that really leads to the major focal point for me in terms of inviting institutional critique from a museum or a festival or an art space that diffuses the possibility of actual critique. So brought to mind friends who run MTL Collective and Decolonize This Place, who were asked to perform at the Biennale so that they would not come to protest the Biennale. Essentially, that's the offering. Thinking of the pharmaceutical companies that are huge donors for MoMA, who are excited to have work about drug use. That there's something very insidious, obviously happening there in some ways. I'm wondering if that has come up in the work that you're doing. Obviously, for you, Liz. But if we could think about that for a moment, where we are offered a chance to show something and who benefits from that invitation.
I think I saw your piece in a probably too depressive a state to be able to, I don't know, say something level-headed about it. But when you mentioned earlier that like nobody threw tomatoes at the screen, but we're not gonna do what you asked either. When we're talking about like contracts and because any audience is kind of like being affected or involved in what the artist is putting on screen. My idea is that the reason that nobody would do either, even if all of the audience members were actually revolted by what your piece is suggesting, but none of them would actually throw any tomatoes at the screen because nobody actually in this climate seems to give a shit about any contracts. And like the notion of taking things seriously or actually I don't know, believing in values is absolutely perfunctory. And even like, in the most non-funded, independent environments, there are still I don't know, micro examples of playing the game and like maintaining relationships are still at work, still in place. And I don't know, you're talking about totally going against these institutions, which I'm all for. But even like in a space like this, how much would we actually talk about each other's work if we don't like it? Would we? Or would we just like avoid saying the obvious? Would we just avoid criticizing each other because it will have like consequences? And I don't know, that this is probably like a very nihilistic view of how things are going, but I think we would we would all like pretend that we're all very political in what we're doing, but none of us would actually honor that responsibility of reacting to a contract that we're involved in.
Or maybe it's just the cost of tomatoes.
Did you have any tomatoes at the concession stand? I think you were badly prepared.
Yeah, it was a programming
Oh.
error. I apologize. We should have had a basket.
Watermelon is a metaphor, I'm sure. Yeah, thinking about that episode in your film where protesters would be invited to not to have other protests. Again, thinking about the perspective that is more available to me, I'm thinking about how, of course, like anti-war actors in Russia, from Russia, are like they do need look for funding, and how often this funding would be found to protest a particular war, but for example, not to say any opinion or to like not to speak about any other war. So, and it's at times it's like best when they do not speak it, because there are actually, unfortunately, a lot of people who oppose Putin and oppose the invasion of Ukraine, but are fully in support and actively speak for the war in Gaza. And yeah, and I think that there is a lot of it is connected to the funding schemes, and it's an interesting topic too.
I just forgot to mention this, that whatever that I talked about, I think, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm curious to hear your idea behind this, but I think this thing that I'm talking about, that you yourself are very pessimistic about it. And for me, at least, the way that that was communicated, and probably one of my favorite things, one of my most favorite things about your piece was that throughout, I knew that you're the founder because I've met you, but there's also like that kind of like cathartic, totally pointless, but cathartic final moment of like you shoving the camera in your own throat. It seems to me that you yourself presenting this have this understanding of like the futility of presenting this contract somehow.
Do you have a response to that, Charles?
Yeah, thank you so much for all of these generative thoughts. Where to begin? Yeah, I mean, it's all dirty, right? It's all dirty, yet you also kind of need to figure out how to draw a line, right? There has to be a point where it just does not. You can't move forward with a whether it's just a relationship with a single person or a relationship with an institution. And these things, of course, especially in small precarious organizations, what is a person and what is an institution? These things can be very confusing and overlap a lot. I think I've been trying to bring, especially since doing this study program here in Lithuania, and thinking a lot about like subversive forms of administration as artistic practice. And I'm trying to bring a sense of intimacy to these contracts, or just like thinking about like contractual obligation in general. Because yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the contract is, in Sunset Seduction, it's absolutely intended to be. I mean, it depends on with each iteration. There's varying degrees of like how seriously it stands as like a legal document. For example, like there's one or two iterations that it was written and edited by a real lawyer, and there's other iterations where it was not even written anything. It was just an experiment in how the money was used. lots of different ways that like this contract or agreement, yeah, as someone else said, maybe contract isn't really even the right thing to be talking about for these kinds of questions. But what I'm trying to get toward is that, yeah, I think the contract in this project is really trying to push up against, trying to bring the limits of administration of it, the fact that we're all administrators, right? As artists, it's unavoidable. So I'm trying to be honest about that, and I'm trying to push, I don't know, just kind of push these tools to their absurd conclusions, and just trying to see if there is anything useful about them. I mean, I think most days I'm with you in the not, or a lot of days, more than I'd like to admit, I'm in the nihilism camp, and especially in the past month with the genocide in Gaza, have been feeling more despair than usual, especially when you have kind of grotesque accumulations of the nonprofit industrial complex in things like the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, this kind of repulsive humanitarian smirk, a bunch of nonprofits in a trench coat, kind of suffocating what aid can actually reach a completely starving population. But that's just that situation is just, it's so grotesque that it's even hard to talk about, and it feels so it's also grotesque in how far removed it is from this space of cultural organizations, and I mean, organizing through cultural work, even doing real political work through cultural organizations sometimes feels so almost trite, not only because of the relatively small amount of capital that moves through these organizations, even places like MoMA, it's big to us, but in the grand scheme of things, not maybe not really actually. Sorry. I feel like I should have given you a trigger warning or something, Liz. That's really funny about the. I knew about all of that, obviously, but I think. Anyway, sorry, I'm really bouncing around. I feel like I've responded to the exact question.
Yeah, I was just thinking, well, you were talking about what I really kind of appreciated and was making me feel such like kind of watching the film is like the just like the ways you're pointing to the kind of like emotional gratification or the like desire that artists have, that that everyone really has for this legitimacy, and like the sort of fighting for crumbs feeling that I think everyone's probably observed at certain points. Like there's so few resources that feel available to people, and so I was just kind of thinking about like and the way that like the like ickiness of the founder in the film, and the sort of way that these things are all like tied together with like desire and like emotional gratification and stuff. And it kind of, and then also thinking about contracts as like kind of like you were saying, like not worth the paper they're printed on these days. Like all these people in like you have a green card, like who cares? Like fuck you, like all these things. That kind of like your film was just kind of evoking in me a desire for like clearer enforceable contracts that are like not about like, oh, like, oh, I really cozied up to this like founder or whatever, but like a much clearer and like more straightforward, I think it's impossible, but a clearer and more straightforward exchange of like support and things that are actually like followed. Like I'm like, yeah, show me where to sign up for something, and it's like, don't have to be that grateful for it. It's just happening. Do what you say. It'd be great if there was more. I don't know.
Communism.
Yeah, maybe.
If I can just quickly hop in, two things. One, you said communism. And I think something I've been thinking about, that's not what I wanted to say. I didn't just want to say thumbs up. I wanted to say something I've been thinking about recently is that, yeah, exactly what you're saying. That contracts, something that resembles contracts, will exist in even the most, utopian anarcho-communist future. There has to be something, somehow, some way. And yeah, again, it might not exist on a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, but there's something. I think there should be some kind of mechanism to clarify how we relate to each other as people and as organizations. And the other thing I wanted to, just before I forget, just going back to this release form thing, I don't remember if it showed at Mimesis, but one of my favorite films ever, Shared Resources by Jordan Lord, is like really all about this like release form, and a big part of the film is I forget what they call it, but is essentially trying to do this reversal, this kind of liberatory reversal of the logic of a release form. And if you're interested in that kind of thing, you should look the project up.
Well,
Go ahead. What do you
Okay.
say?
No.
I just want to add, and I think there's something about the choking on the camera, the expression of sort of intense fury and rage and wanting to lash out while incarcerated, and feeling that for but a moment, and realizing that you have to find some other avenue for this expression, but that feeling is so palpable throughout the film, this frenzied feeling, the moments where words are repeated and lose meaning, and thinking about inviting institutional critique just makes me insists that something inside me insists on bringing up the other lands and the idea that you could win an Oscar, as Auda Hathalin did, or participate in an Oscar-winning film and be shown to be famous for a moment and be murdered, not months later. But that is really sort of maybe the core issue here, is that there's no way to, a contract does not bind someone to life in a particular way or allow someone to continue to make work if the conditions are not possible for that work to be made. That's actually, there's something that breaks contract beyond us, even our wish or will. I'm sure working in conflict generally exposes that.
I mean, I think we can't leave the conversation without talking about violence. And right at the beginning, Charles said that contracts kill. And surely a contract is an emergent property of social relations. And so a violent contract that kills is an emergent property of violent social relations. And maybe in some ways it can point to where that violence in social relationships actually exists. If you kind of follow the breadcrumbs, as it were, that the contract sort of leaves, when the result is violence, then the background must also be that violence. And there's the violence of maybe surveillance, and then there's this call to violence in the film, in the project that we just watched. There's that the violence of surveillance is made very literal, in that the surveillant camera that the assistant plants in the room literally kills, right, and chokes the founder. So there is this sort of implicit recognition that that the violence of surveillance is then replicated in surveillance. It's not violent, right, to resist. Non-violence is not necessarily what's being called for here. And in fact, explicitly, violence is being called for here. And I wonder how we feel about that, but maybe not in a broader political sense, because I'm not sure, maybe we can ground it still in thinking about documentary and using cameras and recording, right? So I love the 1.5 or the 1 meter rule. I don't know if anyone's heard the 1 meter rule by Hara Kazuo. with Sachiko Kobayashi, founder of action documentary as a sort of genre in Japan. And Harakazuo says the 1 meter rule is that you cannot ethically record someone or take their photograph without being within at least 1 meter of their physical body. Because if you're not close enough, they can't hit you.
Oh.
Right? So you need to be in a state of physical risk in order to ethically record. It's not I'm saying that is like factually true, right? But the idea is there that there are these embodied relations at play, even in the kind of ephemeral, ethereal, abstract quality of the recorded image and its purported indexicality that it never really makes good on in terms of its promise that it will represent anything that actually ever happened or ever existed. It seems to like really be bad at doing that, yet it promises it constantly, almost contractually, and then breaks it. That the only way to do that in an ethical way is if you are at physical risk yourself. And there is this question of risk in Charles' work. There's a question of risk. Actually, maybe it would have been smart to read the long description that we got on Film Freeway, which brings in some of your references, Charles. But we didn't do that. That was probably foolish on my part. I apologize. But risk, it definitely plays a part in the thinking behind this. So I wonder about violence, about risk, about recording, about what it means to purport to represent, to purport to even communicate someone else's image, idea, likeness, situation to anybody else. And if you all have thoughts on that.
I do have thoughts. Yeah, it was like a thought that I had while watching a film, and this is a thought that I have been having a lot, like in the last years, being more of a researcher, but working a lot with artists and kind of being exposed to artistic venues, especially in the USA, now in Canada. It's a question, it's like not a fully formed opinion, but this is like something that is always in the background, is how a radical stance, a stance of a certain political purity might be a privilege, and how like a stance that could be seen as collaborative or like a compromised is often like the available reality, especially in the context of military conflicts or I don't know, like a fully consolidated authoritarianism. And it was I'm thinking about it in relation of the film that opened this festival, Shards by Masha Chornaya, and Masha shared how her film is like might not be welcomed in all of the venues because her position does not come out as to some as like clear enough. And so it's interesting to me how as documentarians or maybe ethnographers, like what do we do by demanding a political purity? Yeah.
I think one thing I was thinking about while watching your film was just like, I don't know, in terms of thinking about risk, I do think there's a way that like, in picking like topics to address or people to record or talk about or with, I did really appreciate the kind of like the poking at I mean, it's just sort of like, I don't want to make a film about like the head of a foundation personally, but maybe I should, because I'm always instead making films with and about people who are like less powerful in society. There's definitely there's a whole school of thought about that, but just, yeah, I guess just kind of thinking about like risking, yeah, I don't know, risking like personal discomfort or preference. And I don't know, maybe, yeah, my next film is about a CEO that I shadow for a year every day. Spend all my time. No, just kidding. But yeah, I don't know. It's not really a very fully formed thing, but just thinking about like finding ways to latch onto those like really slippery people and things that are like have all the capital and have all the power is probably a good move.
Risk violence, Charles.
Risk. I mean, there's, yeah, it doesn't really surface in the film, and I can't really talk about the details, but I'm taking risks in personal and professional ways in making this film and showing it. And unfortunately, that's all I can say about that without deepening the risk. Violence. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it's it's what to say about violence. It's contextual. It depends who has power. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't really have thoughts available to me in general about violence at the moment. But one thing I did want to say is this thing about I don't think I am demanding. I don't think anyone should demand purity, and I don't think I'm demanding purity. I don't think anyone on this panel wants or demands purity, because I think we've realized by now that it's impossible and absurd. I think what we can demand is collaboration and to attempt to try to listen to each other in different ways and to try to increase what we consider the bare minimum, even if it feels futile in our little corner of the world. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry. That's all I
It
have.
really highlighted, very much highlighted by that line in your film, watching radical art or exposing yourself to radical art does not suddenly make you radical, like, or you're not, it's not a radical action to consume this. You have to do something else, something more than just watching. Though perhaps that is the first step towards information dissemination. You need to expose someone to a call to action. Though if people have not heard that call yet, then they are actively not listening to the world around them. Should we position microphones outward to the audience? Unless anyone has anything to add on stage. Are there any questions or comments for our panel or for Charles? No pressure. But if so,
No pressure.
I also welcome emails, DMs, whatever.
Taking questions, concerns, comments, complaints.
I might also just position a question again to our panel and maybe into the audience as well. In this thought of giving and sort of the multiple ways to hear that word. The exhibit that you highlight, Charles, is so interesting because it's celebrating something that is both impossible to conceive of or kind of irrelevant, past gifts, past contributions in philanthropy, glorifying and setting an example for future givers, or to, is it aspirational to be able to give, and then to be asking artists or people making work to be giving of themselves in such a particular way that a contract might oblige you to you will be giving us this. And that philanthropists here are also positioned as people who are so instrumental in the possibility of making something, right? Without in the film feature last night, there was a line about having to already have made a feature film in order to get funding to make a feature film, and that this idea of, as everyone's saying, you have to do something good or promise to be good in order to receive this particular funding. You have to have a stamp on your film for a particular length of time, or leave a comment about your thanks for the gift, giving thanks back and forth. If anyone has anything to add to the concept of giving.
We should get like the FinDom model going for filmmakers.
Yes.
Like, people who don't want to be too grateful. We should get some people who really want to get rid of their money.
I
just kidding. But
isn't that maybe what some philanthropists are all about? You know?
Well, I mean, no, it's just so personal that there is like a, and then also if you do receive something that's like a kind of, you know, there is a gratitude. Like, I don't know, it's just also social and sort of personalized in the philanthropic model that it's like, yeah, I don't know.
Well, and I heard in your statement earlier about not needing to, like, you want me to be on my knees and say thank you in this particular way. There's this performance of, in order to receive this gift, you must be so grateful. You know?
Yeah, I mean, that goes across a lot of like levels of all kinds of things, obviously,
absolutely.
but
I do like this idea, the FinDom, the financial doming of philanthropists, though. Maybe that could be a new funding model. I have a friend who, and now, then this is maybe some kind of use of AI that we can get behind. I don't know, maybe not, but she does do financial doming, and she's generating like an avatar of her mistress who can respond to these people with money so that she doesn't have to do it. And I just wonder if we could do that as artists and filmmakers. Like, could we use that model?
Certainly an automation of the existing like model history of the picture in the newspaper that you imagine you're speaking to that person, or, you know, that's the stand-in avatar.
Obviously, actually making films isn't enough.
Of a dominant, subservient.
To get money for making
I see
films.
what you're saying.
Phew, someone.
Do we want to talk about the educational institution? Oh, someone did have a question. Sorry, I was just going to talk about like the founder, could be the department chair, could be the,
yes.
but maybe I don't.
And
Maybe I shouldn't.
Certainly.
Hi, everyone. Charles, thank you so much for your film. It's a breath of fresh air, and for everyone else who's up here sharing thoughts about their work. I'm unfortunately forgetting the name of the thinker who put this idea forward. It'll come to me, and then I'll email you afterwards. But I'm sure you're familiar with the idea that the difference between mobilizing and organizing, and how getting people mobilizing against something is so easy, like, starvation, bad. Let's all get in the streets and be against starvation. But mobilizing for what you're for Palestinian liberation in particular, is much harder to do, to stand for something rather than against something, because you put yourself more at risk, and the potential to compromise something of yourself is higher. And I just appreciated in your film the clarity of your position and acknowledge the risk. You're probably alluding to legal risk, but I won't ask you anything about that. But I'm reminded of there are so many steps even after you make a film to protect yourself, like music licensing, insurance, like all these other contracts that we don't think of. And yeah, I have more to say, but maybe I can connect with you afterwards. But just appreciated the clarity of your position and thoughts.
Just a quick warm thank you. And it was that quote, who said it was also on the tip of my tongue. I had to Google it. Annoyingly, it was Kwame Ture, and I say annoyingly because I have a big fat quote by him in the film. But thank you.
As I re-enter academia after my 4-year removal that wasn't that successful. I don't know. I just was curious if we wanted to talk about the beginning, the intro that dealt specifically with CU. I feel like I don't know enough yet to respond to that. Mata, did you have any thoughts in the beginning?
Okay.
No pressure.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Well, I mean, at least I don't have anything to say about the stuff that Charles had put in the introductory contract before the film. But you know, to like a broader question about like not even like specifically this institution, but like academia as probably like a sanctuary place for probably anti-institutional activity of any kind, whether it is within the context of arts or not. And I would say, for instance, something that I can personally speak to is how kind of like the apparatus of liberal progressive system and how it in the name of making something, I don't know, more visible or empowered actually works very much in the interest of channeling and limiting those that it claims or seeks to represent. For instance, I don't know, if you're somebody from the global south, as I am, you gotta work as someone from the global south. You cannot like engage in working something that seems to have like these essential inherent bounds to an identity that you do not represent. I don't know. Therefore, your existence and your practice would be easily reduced to cosplaying your identity, whatever that word means, in order to appease the institution's desire for maintaining its, for instance, Orientalism in new disguises. That's what I have to say about it. And it is in every institution.
Well, and I think you're pointing to the double edge of DEI and why
Yes.
just the formal announcement of diversity and inclusion does not beget actual safe inclusion where someone feels supported
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
comfortable, and really that any recognition offers subjugation, right? Anytime something is named, suddenly regulations can be drawn around them. You can think about trans healthcare, for example, where prior to naming the need, there was access in different ways, and in some ways difficulties, but now that it's named, there's an exposure that has not garnered happy results in lots of spaces.
Yeah, I also wanted to add on the kind of the limitations of the kind of this like beautiful idea of university as a sanctuary. university cannot replace a functioning social state.
Mhm.
And a lot of students who are taken as, like as, or I don't know, like some of them do not have a formal status of refugees, but who are coming from poor countries in conflict. Here they may find themselves in another kind of limbo because they can only work on campus. There are not enough jobs. They're paid only minimum wage. The university does not take care of them during the breaks. If they have nowhere to go, and now it's increasingly dangerous for them to leave the country and return to renew their visas. The insurance insure you up to your neck, and if you have ear infection, well, you're bankrupt. Not enough psychiatrists, psychologists. So I think it is a great avenue for universities to undertake, but it's just like there has to be a support structure, not only the intake and reporting on how great the university is.
I mean, the University of Colorado is an arm of a vicious and unapologetically colonial, extractivist, neoliberal government. I mean, to expect it to be anything but what it actually is in some ways extremely naive, right? That we would think, oh, but this is supposed to be the safe space. It's like, whoever actually did actually say that? I'm not sure. The language around the university is building soft power and hard power simultaneously. I mean, you have in engineering programs, you have computer scientists who are working day and night to justify fracking operations in East Boulder County, let alone other places in the world. So, the notion that there would be some kind of that even the idea that this institution could even be trusted with the charge of attempting to better itself is kind of absurd to me, right? That we say, oh, you should do better, you should try to do better. It's like, why even ask for it at a certain point? What an absurd expectation to have. Maybe we can siphon some resources off the top. We can skim a little bit. We can, when we talk about being happy with the crumbs, like, man, I genuinely am. I am very proud of my ability to find little crumbs underneath the couches of this particular institution. I know where all my little piles are, and I go back to them like a small rodent, just
Are we
like nibbling
sitting in
away,
one of them right now?
and I covet those little crumb piles. Honestly, they give me a sense of purpose to some extent, which, I mean, sounds maybe pathetic, but I do think that's what this actually is. So there's in some ways I rejoice in the dismantling of DEI infrastructure because it was a nonsense. It was, like their
Lip service.
and also just a huge money dump. I mean, we're hiring vice chancellors of DEI for this and that and the other, being paid $300,000, $400,000 a year when we could be hiring faculty from underrepresented backgrounds and under-resourced communities. 12 or 15 of them for the same amount. We didn't see those kinds of changes happening anyway. It was just one and done. Put a name on it, put a little tag on the door, show the parents, that are coming with their kids coming out of high school. Oh, look, this is our DEI office. And then that's it, right? It moves on. And I know that some people did have materially benefited from these programs, right? And some students have materially benefited from these programs, and I don't begrudge them that at all. And that benefit should be one that they take, very rapidly and use it and deploy those resources as best that they possibly can to survive in a extremely white, extremely rich institution that is the University of Colorado. But it certainly wasn't like the way, I don't think.
Well, and it reminds me of, and Charles, I think the sort of the air of some of the pieces or segments of your film remind me of the backwards, ill-informed trainings that people are paid to give that are outdated, outmoded, offensive. Someone being instructed to use language that really no one should be using, and that's what's being offered by these institutions is checkmarked off training, and that as there's some idea that the authority, the boss, would be an expert in this. That someone would know best. That's not generally the case. Did you have something you wanted to?
Well, Charles, I saw you went.
Yeah, maybe just just to quickly, I feel like it's appropriate to just say something quick about the preface video. Yeah, I appreciate what y'all are saying 110%. I can't say it better myself. The only thing I want to add, it just felt important. I don't know. It's nothing like that unique. The situation Mimesis has and its relationship to like a broader kind of big nefarious university. It just felt, when I was thinking about like what kind of relationship I want to have, or what the so-called dare might be, and we had discussed on a Zoom call too many possible options for like what a contract might look like. There was one point where this whole thing might have been some kind of performance. I mean, it's all performative to some extent, right? But an actual performance. But it just felt like a modest gesture, as far as I understood. That there's still like a decent presence of the university community, or at least like the film community at CU Boulder at this festival, and to try to as we all know, people, over the summer, kind of the pace of movement work at universities takes a hit, and just to try to, I reached out to the main organization that drafted those demands and just asked, hey, you still feel like these things that you posted in April, does this still describe the state of things at your institution? And they were like, yep. And I just kind of wanted to offer an opportunity to think about those concerns and demands. And, and from my own perspective, they are incomplete and imperfect. That doesn't mean they're not righteous. Just thought it was an opportunity to think about these things as the new academic year begins.
No, thank you. I always appreciate the opportunity to get a chance to lay in to see you in a public space.
Right. Not that you don't already have enough opportunities. How generous of me, right?
Thank you so much, everyone. We are out of time. Charles, thank you very much for
Charles.
joining us from afar, for sharing your work. Thank you, Mahda. Thank you, Katya. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Nelly. Thank you, Chloe. Thank all of you. And we'll see you at 1 p.m.
1 p.m.
For the next program.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Charles.
Bye, Charles.
Panelists.